There are currently 7 Star Wars movies out there, and by the time of 2019, by the year of 2019, there will be 9 mainstream episode films, also along with 2 anthology films. So of course, there are many Star Wars movies with many to come, and of course there are going to be some films that are better than others. A lot of people point to the prequels as being bad movies. I personally love the prequels. I don't think they're as good as the originals or the sequels, but I still think they are very good movies. So today I'll be ranking ranking the Star Wars movies from number 7 to number 1. At number 7 is Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace. Now, this doesn't mean I think this is a bad movie. I definitely do really like the prequels. However, I do think the originals are overall better. But I do think Episode 1 probably is the weakest in the saga. Although that doesn't mean it's a bad movie. I still think it's a very good movie. A lot of people think this is a bad movie because it might have bad acting or it gets confusing. And it may get confusing if you don't understand the material. And I think the acting's pretty good, but I personally really like this movie, and I really like the politics. I really like politics in general, and it's really cool to see it in Star Wars. And I think just kind of the mastermind of Palpatine is very interesting to see throughout the prequel. So I think The Phantom Menace is definitely still a very good movie. Introduces a ton of really cool characters like Qui-Gon Jinn and Darth Maul, and gives us origins to characters like Obi-Wan Kenobi and Anakin Skywalker, who will eventually turn into Darth Vader. At number 6 is Attack of the Clones, and what I said about The Phantom Menace does apply to this movie as well. While this movie is towards the bottom of the list, that doesn't mean I think it's a bad movie. I think this is a very interesting movie, and it has Count Dooku in it, who is my favorite Sith. I think he's a very underrated character. So he is the main villain of this movie, which is definitely a plus. And this is a good movie. I like to see Anakin as the Padawan, and kind of the roots of Darth Vader start to be set in. You can see him getting angry, and what will eventually turn into him falling to the dark side. So it's very interesting to see all that stuff, and I think Attack of the Clones is definitely a very good movie. It's, we get to see the start of the Clone Wars. We get to see exactly what the Clone Wars meant, which is, of course, the Republic using the clones, which would eventually be transformed into the Stormtroopers. So this is definitely a very good movie. It's also very cool to see the relationship between Padme and Anakin grow until eventually they get married at the end of the film. So Attack of the Clones definitely is a very good movie. At the number 5 spot is the original Star Wars movie, which is now Star Wars Episode 4, A New Hope, and this movie was absolutely revolutionary. This is what, of course, sparked the whole Star Wars saga. This was originally made as a standalone film, and I'm sure the people behind this movie, like George Lucas, when this was made in 1977, definitely didn't know that they would make 9 sequels to this movie in total. Well, actually 7 sequels and 3 prequels, but in total 7 movies in the series. So this is definitely a very good movie, and of course, I do think this is the worst of the original movies. Now, I don't want you to get confused by the word worst. That doesn't mean that I think this is a bad movie either. I think this is definitely a very good movie. It's one of my favorite movies of all time. Of course, all of these movies are probably my top 7 movies of all time. So this is definitely a very good film. It was the first ever Star Wars movie. Personally, I watched this movie fourth. I know some people watch the original films first, then the prequels. Personally, I watched the prequels, then the originals, then the sequels, but this is definitely still a very good movie, and it does introduce us to characters such as Luke, Leia, Han. So, A New Hope comes in at number 5. At number 4 is the original sequel to Episode 4, and this is, of course, Star Wars Episode 5, The Empire Strikes Back. Now, I had a really hard time debating whether this should be number 4 or number 3, and I'll talk more about that when I get to number 3. And this is a great movie. Of course, this has a lot of character development in it. The characters really do kind of develop their own kind of personalities and stuff. It's very fun to see the development of Han and Leia's relationship, and Luke training to become a Jedi. Definitely very fun, and of course this is the movie where it has the famous scene where Vader says, "No, I am your father," to Luke, which shocked everyone, and this is definitely a great movie, and again, I had a very hard time placing this at number 4. On some days I think it should be at number 3, some days I think it should be at number 4, so overall this is definitely a great movie. At number 3 is Return of the Jedi. Now, this is definitely a great movie as well. This is episode 6, which is, again, the sequel to episode 5. So we really did just go through the original trilogy, which is episode 4, 5, and 6. And really, it's really hard to tell if I like this movie better than episode 5 or not. Really, I'd say they're tied. I wouldn't say that I like one more, like one more than the other. However, if I had to pick, I think I like episode 6 slightly more. Again, some days I would say I like episode 5, but, more. So I guess you could just say that this is really tied with episode 5. But this is definitely a great movie, and while the character development, the actual characters and that stuff may not be as good as episode 5, there might not be as much story in this, in this movie. There definitely is more of a in-depth story in episode 5. This is still a great movie. In my opinion, this has the best battle of the whole Star Wars saga, which is the Battle of Endor. I really like that battle, along with the duel in episode 6. It may not be kind of as coordinated and as choreographed as the duels in the prequels. However, it's still definitely a very good duel, very fast-paced and very emotional. And this movie is, of course, when Vader comes back to the light, and it has a very sad scene at the end where, of course, with Vader's funeral, and then you see the ghosts of Anakin, Obi-Wan, and Yoda. So this is definitely a great film. At number 2 is Star Wars Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith. Now this movie as well, this is very hard to put this at number 2. I was actually originally going to put this at number 1 till literally a few seconds ago really, when I decided to put this at number 2. And this is definitely a great movie. This is of course where Vader turns to the dark side, or when Anakin turns to the dark side, which is really why it's so high up on the list. Of course the prequels are slightly lacking in story compared to the originals and the sequels. Of course, they definitely do have a lot of really good stories in them. However, the originals are just so good that I think you can't really compare them. You can't really compare the prequels to the originals. However, this is a very emotional film. It's very emotional to see kind of Obi-Wan versus Anakin at the end, to see Padme kind of give up on life because Anakin's turned to the dark side. It's very emotional. Plus, there are a lot of really great lightsaber duels. There are actually a total of 5 lightsaber duels in this movie, which is, really cool. There's only one lightsaber duel in every other film, so this is definitely very cool that has that many duels. And also the Battle of Coruscant at the very beginning of the film, I think, is a very good scene. So overall, that's why this movie is at number 2. And at number 1 is the most recent Star Wars film, and this is Star Wars Episode 7, The Force Awakens. Now again, this is very hard to put this at number 1. Originally, just a few minutes ago, I was gonna put this at number 2, and have Episode 3 as my favorite film. However, I decided that this film was slightly better. Of course, this is a great film. I love how there's a female protagonist. Very cool to have, Han and Leia's son as the main antagonist. This is a great movie, very cool. The only problem I have with it is that it seems to copy A New Hope a little bit too much, but besides that, it's a very good movie. It has a lot of really good graphics, and I was going to put this behind Episode 3, but overall, I just thought about, how much I enjoyed these movies when watching them, and I enjoy watching them both. However, I think I enjoy watching The Force Awakens just a bit more than Episode 3, so that's why I put it above the rest of them. So these are all great movies. However, I do think Episode 7 is just slightly better than the rest, and I definitely do look forward to Episode 8 and 9. They might even be better than 7. So I hope you enjoyed. Don't forget to like, subscribe, comment if you want. There'll be more content coming up soon, and I will see you all next time.